Alright, welcome back to Gamer Know-How, Gamer News, where we talk about all the latest gamer stories. Today we're talking about how Apple surrendered to Epic. Yes, Apple's been going after Epic for its new game store competition app that can be assigned to mobile devices such as iPhones, Android, basically any mobile devices. Well, Apple has surrendered. They're pulling back their lawsuit threatens, they're pulling back their suits and slap suits, they're pulling back everything. But it is only for Europe, and we'll explain why. So Apple has backpedaled away from preventing Epic Games from creating, developing, and releasing a rival app store to battle App Store on iOS devices in Europe. This allows Epic to offer an optional replacement app store to European iPhone users. Epic Games is also pushing for its app on other mobile device companies, which have declined to fight Epic, unlike Apple. So Apple and Epic have been in a back and forth for a while over Epic's attempt to sue Apple for being a monopoly in the US. By the way, Apple is a monopoly in the US. I mean, it's pretty obvious. I mean, their only competitor is Android, and like 5% of the population uses Android compared to 95% that use Apple. So I would consider it a monopoly. Epic was right to sue Apple, even though they didn't win. We'll get to that in a second. But Apple's been salty about that lawsuit because Epic Games was technically right, even though the judge in that case was corrupt. Doesn't matter. Apple still won, even though Apple realized, hey, we may get some more lawsuits in the future because we are technically a monopoly. We just got lucky with a corrupt judge. So Apple's been kind of salty, but they really couldn't do anything in this scenario because Europe has different laws than they do in the US. Apple had bitterly fought against Epic's attempts to create and release an alternative app store for mobile users, but since the EU voted on rule that bars digital monopolies on certain types of apps, there really is no legal avenue available for Apple to stop Epic Games' app in Europe. So that's the thing. The EU has something called the Digital Marketing Act, which prevents companies from holding monopolies on certain types of apps and mobile devices in general. So Apple really can't use monopoly powers and prevent other competitors from making competitive apps against their apps. Like Google can make Google Maps on Apple devices because Maps is trash. You can make Keynote. You can have bookstores instead of Apple Reading and Apple Book. Apple Music, Spotify can have their own app instead of you just being forced to have Apple Music. And now Epic Games' App Store can be downloaded on iOS devices in Europe, so you don't have to use the App Store to download apps. You can use Epic Games' own App Store to download apps as well. But this is only in Europe. America takes another L. It's important to note that this is only affecting Europeans, as US-specific law protections, Digital Marketing Act, protects Epic from Apple's ire. However, a federal judge ruled in 2021 that in the US, Apple doesn't have a monopoly. It does, over certain application types. Apple is a monopoly in the US. I mean, if you ever ask someone what type of phone, 9 times out of 10 they're going to say they have an iPhone, some type of iPhone. Some people still use Blackberries, but those are usually old people. And Androids are usually used by immigrants or people who are, or tourists, or people who moved to the US and are now US citizens. So usually it's people who are non-native born who have Androids. There are some people, I do have 2 friends that have Androids, but they also have iPhones to use Discord, so that kind of shows you that even people who have Androids have to buy iPhones to connect with the people. So it's like, Apple does have a monopoly. The only reason why they don't have a monopoly is because a federal judge who is corrupt in that case ruled that they don't. That's only one person who has one specific opinion, and they made themselves known. So yeah, that federal judge was wrong. Apple does have a monopoly, but in Europe, it doesn't matter if Apple has a monopoly because Digital Marketing Act prevents them from using their monopoly powers. Apple still maintains its control over providing its only app store for its mobile devices. However, Google, Android, and other mobile devices and companies have decided to support Epic Games' App Store on their platforms, proving once again that only Apple is greedy enough to deny competition. Yep, Google phones, Moto phones, I think that's how you say it, Android phones, and also tablets, the Chromebooks. I forget what the Samsung's version of the Chromebook is called. But basically all these devices allow Epic Games' App Store to be downloaded. Obviously PCs allow Epic's App Store to be downloaded, but Apple is really the only one here that's not allowing the Epic Games App Store to be downloaded by users. Which, by the way, Epic Games' App Store is a lot better to be used than Apple's App Store. Apple's App Store gives you basically the same 6 games that have always been on the front of the App Store. They've never updated their recommended games. It's always the same 6 apps. Epic Games at least has a revolving door where every day the suggestions are different. Obviously, Fortnite and Evil Dead will show up a lot more often than the other games, but it usually switches out. I'm just saying because I hate Apple, and I'm saying that anything that goes against Apple's monopoly or mods or greedy tendencies is good enough for me. So, all about money. Epic CEO has gone mask off, revealing that the entire fight has been about Epic's attempt to challenge Apple's key moneymaker, with 25 to 30% of its profits coming from fees that apps pay to be on the App Store, the only way for apps to be downloaded on newer iPhones. Apple declined to comment. So, this is the big point here. Apple's key moneymaker is the fact that 25 to 30% of their profit comes from fees that Apple apps must pay to be on their App Store. So they have to pay to be on Apple's App Store. I don't know about Epic Games' App Store. It's mostly Epic Games that are on Epic's App Store. I know for the Google one, it's a lot cheaper than Apple's App Store, which is why Android is better for smaller apps before they go to bigger apps. Like if you want to release your first app to get some revenue, you would go to Google's App Store because it's much cheaper. You don't have to pay that much. Apple's been making their fees higher because, of course, they're greedy, and they've already admitted that 30% of their profits come from their fees that they make apps pay. So Apple's worried about their app. When Epic opens up their new App Store, Epic's claims that they're going to be charging lower rates, meaning that more apps are going to try and go the Epic route to get better revenue than Apple, which could lead to less apps being on the App Store. So yeah, Epic Games is just being smarter. Charging lower rates gets more customers. Charging higher rates doesn't get less customers unless you're a monopoly like Apple is. That's why Apple's a monopoly. They only have one app store, and that's the only app store you can get to have your apps downloaded. That's a monopoly. One way to get one thing done. So the bad blood remains. Apple still demands $73 million from Epic over the antitrust case, which was wrongly decided. Said that Apple wasn't a monopoly, but it definitely is. It definitionally is. Apple's just being a crazy biff about it. The bad blood remains as Apple will be forced by the EU's Digital Marketing Act to comply with Epic Games' new competing app store. Comment below your thoughts. So I think that the European Union can celebrate because they are better than America in this instance. For once, Europe has something that actually deals with corporate greed and deals with monopolies, making our economy worse and the consumer lives worse. The Digital Marketing Act is something that should happen in the US, and it should happen sooner rather than later. Comment below your thoughts. Thank you guys for watching. Like if you like, dislike if you don't, subscribe if you like it, and I'll see you guys next time. Toodaloo, have a blessed day.